Thank you so much, Tim. And Norman, Elena, wow, thank you again for allowing me to be part of this incredible journey. If I still had an afro, my hair would have been blown back. But alas, those days are long gone. Those three presentations were just absolutely breathtaking and incredibly impactful. As Tim just said, I just came back from Cairo. The World Urban Forum brings together almost 30,000 urbanists from across the world, mainly practitioners. And it was so striking when Norman started off this morning talking about these two kinds of urbanism that we in some ways either contribute to or we try and radically undermine. And Cairo couldn't be more fitting in terms of that contrast. I had the privilege of spending some time in some of these ancient 1,000-year-old buildings in old Cairo, and you want to weep because it's so beautiful. And then you've got to traipse more than an hour to the venue where the World Urban Forum happened, which was at the epicenter of New Cairo, which is, if you will, the paradigm, I must say, of everything that's wrong with urbanism that Norman was talking about this morning. So what I come away from the World Urban Forum with is three things. One, there's a very deep and profound desire for transformation of our cities. There's simultaneously an acknowledgement that SDG 11, that anchors the urban work, we are nowhere near achieving any of its indicators by 2030. We're in a deep crisis. And what struck me across the many panels and fora was a sense of stuckness. People don't know what's the next move. Of course, no least because of the current context we find ourselves in, given what has happened with the right-wing lurch in the world, the proliferation of all kinds of violent conflicts, and of course, the collapse of the German government within the last few days, again, symptomatic of this deeper governance malaise that is confronting all of us all over the world. And so what this program is doing, what you are meant to be achieving in the world, couldn't be more timely. And I think as I was listening to the three presentations, it struck me that this group of brilliant scholars have three skill sets now, since I met them in January earlier in the year. One, you've got a surgical precision to work with data, but not for the sake of the data or the beauty or the aesthetics of the visualizations, but to inform decision-making and animate citizenship so that we can produce better governance outcomes. Secondly, you've learned how to work with interdisciplinary teams, and you appreciate that it's the co-production of multiple knowledges that will make the difference, and that the data instruments are merely a tool to lubricate and facilitate the quality of those co-production discussions. And for me, thirdly, and in some ways most excitingly, is that you can now produce new kinds of social narratives. And those social narratives, which is what anchors desire, what anchors politics, what anchors ambition, what anchors desires for a different world, that can be embedded within a designed language. This is so rare, but so essential in our technological age. But with that said, as I was coming across and getting to Cairo, experiencing the dissonance of that city, hearing the American election outcome on Tuesday morning, I couldn't help but, feel that my heart was shattering. And when my heart breaks, I turn to Tom Waits. And Tom Waits has many depressing songs, but by far the most bleak and unredeeming music that he produces is a track called Poor Edward. And Poor Edward is about a Siamese twin that is locked into a pact for death. And they commit suicide, and the good twin ends up in purgatory because of the suicide, of course. And in some ways, I am telling you the story not because I will avoid the salsa parties that Kent goes to when he's in Latin America, but it is important, as Cornel West says, to learn to live with the blues. We've got to inhabit the blues because it is good for some things. It helps us to channel pain and heartache into an aesthetic expression. And aesthetics matter because it is the stuff that consolidates cultural transformation. It helps us to endure and extract what I call a poetic resilience, So resilience isn't about just having a language or having concepts or tools or a sense of self-actualization to transcend. It is about knowing that despite not being able to see a way forward, one can translate that capacity into a form of being and enactment, which is the poetic quality. And thirdly, the blues, it helps us to be prepared that things can always get worse. They can. And we've got to confront that because we are charged to live through this particular convulsion in the world as we're trying to figure out what it means to live within planetary boundaries. So the blues for me suggest three practice and conceptual anchors. One, urban inequality can only be addressed systematically and systemically by pursuing environmental justice. Because of the times we live in, and you would have seen some of the data points. Secondly, the guiding ethics of this particular fight for environmental justice is dignity and beauty. And again, I would suggest that in all three presentations, we saw that shining through brilliantly, and in my case, it inspired. And thirdly, integrative design mindsets are exactly what's called for, because this is, as Kent elaborated earlier on, it helps us to work with three critical things at the same time: a deep engagement with context, an acknowledgement of power, and a recognition that what we propose, what we want to bring into the world, has to resonate at a fundamental level with desire, with structures of desire, of individuals, of communities, and very importantly, as the Bilbao group reminded us, communities that is yet to come, yet to be made. And so I can't personally wait to see what you are going to do with this incredible set of dispositions and capabilities you've acquired over the year. Now, when I spoke to some of the scholars before I came, they told me everyone is obsessed with the question, what next? Where do we go? I have absolutely no idea, of course. But what I do know, coming from Cape Town, working on the African continent, that I want this brilliance to be extended across the Mediterranean. And I'm so happy that this is exactly the next step in our journey together. And finally, for me, everything comes down to institutions. And what I'm hoping is that you will become the virus that is going to infect our institutions so that they can learn to become what they should be to serve the interests of people, to serve the interests of environmental justice. So finally, allow me to congratulate you, Norman, Kent, the entire faculty, and of course, especially the brilliant scholars that we are celebrating today, and most importantly, their families, because I'm sure there's all kinds of sacrifices that have had to be made to allow them to be in this incredible cauldron of pressure, of love, and of deep discipline to produce the kind of outcomes they've done today. So, where I am now is, I think I'm just about ready to trade the blues for my green little toga. Thank you very much.